Good evening, everyone. I am Attorney Gerald Grace Fortuna, your resource speaker for this evening. I promised to talk about criminal law. So you see, in our society nowadays, it is important to have a little knowledge of the law because you can't just say, no, I am excused, don't arrest me. I did not know in the first place that there is a law about this particular thing. Because according to Article 3 of the Civil Code of the Philippines, ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance therewith. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that even though the topic for this evening is entitled Basic Principles in Criminal Law, this is not limited to lawyers, to law students, but this is good for everyone. Because everyone deserves to know the law. So going back to criminal law, so it is actually a very long and a very broad topic. So my lecture actually comes in series if given the opportunity to discuss again the next time. So I'm going to discuss about the basic principles of criminal law. I'm going to discuss about felonies and circumstances affecting criminal liability, persons criminally liable. I'm also going to discuss about penalties, about crimes, and special penal laws. But for this evening, I'm going to discuss about basic principles in criminal law. So I will try to cover as many articles as I can, but I only have 30 minutes, okay, for tonight's session. So anyway, this criminal law that I'm talking about, criminal law actually has three sources: revised penal code, special penal laws, and presidential decrees enacted by the late President Ferdinand Marcos. But for tonight, our focus is the revised penal code as the source of criminal law. So am I speaking French? So I understand. So just like in my law classes, before I discuss deeper any law, I make sure that I discuss first the background. So it actually goes like this. Aside from the principle that ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance therewith, there is another deep reason why we have to study the law. So it boils down to the elements of a state. So for a state to become a state, for a country to become a country, there are actually four elements that have to be complied with. So the first is, my acronym for this is PTGS. So people, territory, government, and sovereignty. So, for people pertains to the inhabitants or the population of a state. Territory refers to the lands, the rivers, the seas, even the airspace, which are covered by the jurisdiction of a state. Then, government is the agency through which the will of the state are formulated, exercised, and carried out. Then, fourth element is the sovereignty. So, sovereignty means the power to command and enforce obedience free from foreign control. So, since Philippines is a sovereign country, it is considered, it is a state, it is a sovereign state as recognized by it is even a member state of the United Nations. So, as a sovereign state, it has the sole power or right to command and enforce obedience, if free from control of any country, even the superpower country like the United States, even the emerging superpower country like China. So, aside from the sovereignty that is mentioned as one of the elements of the state, there is a particular provision in the Constitution which also talks about sovereignty. So, if you are going to look at Section 1 of Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution, you can see there under the provision on declaration of principles and state policies. Under section 1, it says there that Philippines is a democratic and republican state. Sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. So how are you going to reconcile sovereignty as element of a state and sovereignty as discussed in the Constitution? So in my own understanding, in my own reconciliation of the two provisions, of the two principles, it goes like this. So even if it has the state which has sovereignty, it has the power to command and enforce obedience, that sovereignty still at the end of the day boils down, or the state gets that from the people, because the people is the source of government authority actually. How? Because of the people's right to vote. So that is how I reconcile that. So much for sovereignty. Let us go to the government. So government is defined as the agency through which the will of the state is formulated, expressed, and carried out. But in relation to that particular definition, there is actually a very important principle regarding government. So that principle is no other than ours is not a government of men. Ours is a government of laws. That actually highlights the rule of law. No one is above the law, because our government should be guided by laws, not just by men. So this is why the law is very important. This is why everyone must know the law. And the law can actually be classified into different categories, but for purposes of this discussion, I'm going to distinguish. I'm going to discuss law as either municipal law or international law. When you say international law, it is the law that governs between the states. One very famous international law is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. So being the law between the states, it was actually invoked by the Philippines in asserting its jurisdiction over the Scarborough Shoal. So that is international law. Now for the municipal law is the domestic law. So here in the Philippines, we have our own municipal law. We have our own domestic law. There in the US, they have their own law. So they have their municipal or domestic law, however they call that. Then for the Philippines, we have in my law classes, I enumerate the municipal laws according to the subjects that we or I have to study in law school in preparation for the bar, to make it simpler, to make it easier. So I taught my students that there are 7 municipal laws basically: political law, labor law, civil law, taxation law, mercantile law, criminal law, remedial law. Okay? And of course, the star for this night, okay, the highlight for tonight is criminal law. So let us understand criminal law deeper. So criminal law is defined as a branch of municipal law, a branch of domestic law, which defines crimes, treats of their nature, and provide for their punishment. So in order for you to better understand that definition of criminal law, I'm going to relate that to a current event. So I read from last May 7, that was May 8. I read an article in Cebu Daily News about this a son who killed her own mother, sadly, on May 7 at approximately 7:30 p.m. So it was reported that the son had actually been depressed for a long time, and since everyone is under enhanced community quarantine, there was difficulty preparing for these maintenance drugs that led to that very sad event. So in that case, okay, the applicable law is criminal law because the son was actually eventually charged with a criminal case. So let us go back to the definition of criminal law. Criminal law is a branch of municipal law which defines crimes, treats of their nature, and provide further punishment. So the definition of that crime is parricide. Now you might ask, why parricide? Why not homicide? So this is the rule, okay? If it is just a killing, if someone kills his or her mother or father or child, whether legitimate or illegitimate, or ascendant or descendant or spouse, then the crime is not homicide but parricide because of the element of relationship. If other than those mentioned, then it is either homicide or murder. So you might ask, what differentiates homicide from murder? Okay, if the killing is attended with aggravating circumstances, like there was payment of ransom money, something like that, then the crime is not just simple homicide but already murder. So you can see that is the beauty of criminal law. One single thing that actually twists the whole situation. Yes. Then treats of their nature. So this is very important because we have to consider what is the nature of the crime of parricide. So parricide actually is punished under the revised penal code. It is a crime mala inse because crimes are actually either crimes mala inse or crimes mala prohibita. Okay, there are differences between the two, but for the purpose of this discussion, I will discuss only one difference. Okay, don't worry, later on, okay, we are going to discuss further about that concept. So when you say crime mala inse, intent is immaterial. When you say crime mala prohibita, when you say crime mala inse, modifying circumstances are appreciated. But when you say crimes mala prohibita, modifying circumstances are not appreciated. So you might ask, what are those modifying circumstances? So they could be justifying circumstances, exempting circumstances, mitigating circumstances, aggravating circumstances, and then alternative circumstances. So in that case, there is one modifying circumstances that is very promising to be present because that son is, according to the report, is actually mentally ill. So that could be insanity. Okay, insanity actually is an exempting circumstance. So what is the effect of exempting circumstance? No criminal liability. So assuming that it will be found out that son is really insane, then it could be an exempting circumstance, and that son could have no criminal liability. But one very important thing that we have to consider about insanity is that there must be complete deprivation of intelligence. There must be no lucid intervals, because if there is a lucid interval, we cannot say that there is complete deprivation of intelligence. So if there is lucid interval, it is not exempting. The son will not be absolved from criminal liability, but instead it will just be a mitigating circumstance The effect is that the penalty will be lowered. Okay, so that is the meaning of traits of their nature. Then, going back to the definition, criminal law provides punishment. So the punishment for parricide is reclusion perpetua, to death. So I guess I have fully defined what is criminal law. So basically, that is the definition of criminal law. Now let us delve deeper into the articles of the revised penal code. I mentioned earlier that there are three sources of criminal law: revised penal code, special penal code, and the presidential decrees. But for the purpose of tonight's discussion, again, we will focus on the revised penal code. The revised penal code consists of 367 articles, and it is divided into Book 1 and Book 2. Book 1 covers Articles 1 to Article 113. Then Book 2 covers Articles 114 to Article 367. Okay, then Book 1 is further divided into three titles. So, Title 1 is Felonies and Circumstances Affecting Criminal Liability. Title 2 is about persons criminally liable, and Title 3 is entitled Penalties. Okay, for tonight's discussion, again, I will lay down first the basics in criminal law and try to relate it to current events to make my discussion as relatable as possible. So for the record, Title 1 covers Articles 1 to 15. But since I only have actually less than 30 minutes to discuss, maybe I can take up only Articles 1 to Article 3. So let's start. Article 1 is about the time when the revised penal code took effect. Okay? So you might say, why do you have to be very particular with the time when the revised penal code took effect? Because this has a connection with Article 2. Article 2 talks about application of the provisions of the revised penal code. So, in this article, there are three important principles, and these principles are that pivotal that in the field of criminal law, they are considered as characteristics of criminal law. So, they are the following: prospectivity principle, generality principle, and territoriality principle. So, of the three principles, okay, this principle on prospectivity has a big relation to Article 1. Because prospectivity principle in criminal law states that penal laws only punish an act after its effectivity. So, you can only be punished for an act, okay, that is punishable by the revised penal code after its effectivity. So it goes like this: the effectivity of the revised penal code is January 1, 1932. So, meaning to say, if you commit a wrongful act on January 1, 1932 onwards, and that wrongful act happens to be one of the wrongful acts punished under the revised penal code, then you committed a crime and you must be punished. But if that wrongful act was done before January 1, 1932, it is not considered a crime, no matter how wrongful no matter how wrongful that act is, and you will not be punished, because we have this principle in criminal law which says that nolum crimen nolla pena sine lege. There is no crime, there is no law punishing it. So again, since that act is not you committed that act before the effectivity of the revised penal code, then technically there is no crime yet, because there is no law yet that punishes that act. unless there is a different law which uh, which punishes that act. As what I said earlier, there are three sources of criminal law. So if it is punished under special penal laws or presidential decree, then you committed a crime and you must be punished. So that is the beauty again of criminal law. I will relate it to recent events. So, for example, the executive order of Governor Gwen Garcia. For example, you 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 went to the beach. Okay, you went to the beach today, but tomorrow Governor Gwen Garcia uh, executed an executive order prohibiting swimming at the beach. Okay, the effectivity of that act, of course, of that law is of course starting the next day. So you cannot be punished for swimming the day before that law because that is not applicable yet. So just remember the effectivity of the law because of a penal law, because a penal law will be effective after the effectivity. It cannot look backward. So lex prospicit, non respisit, another important principle in criminal law. The law looks forward, not background, not backward. So that's for prospectivity. Now, for generality and territoriality principle, I will discuss it by example again. So I guess there is another news again about a certain Cebuana model and his Spanish boyfriend who successfully went to Mualbual and swimming and drinking beer, but unfortunately they were caught by the policemen. So how did they do it? So rumor has it that they presented false certificates. So actually that is another crime. It could be falsification of public document as well. But anyway, in that situation, generality and territoriality principle are very applicable because generality principle states that Philippine criminal laws are binding on all persons who live or sojourn in the Philippines. So you might wonder, Castro is Spanish, so is it possible to punish him in the Philippines? The answer is a resounding yes, because as per generality principle, criminal law is applicable to him because he sojourned here. He has a temporary, even if he is not a Filipino national, the fact that he is here, he sojourns here, then criminal law is applicable to him. Then, very closely related to generality principle is territoriality principle. So the fact the Philippines absolutely has jurisdiction over the two because especially over Castro, even if he is Spanish, because that crime took place in the Philippines, and Philippines has jurisdiction over crimes committed inside its territory. So if I am not mistaken, they were actually charged with disobedience to person in authority for violating the executive order that released by Governor Garcia prohibiting swimming the beach, and even even the mayor, Mualbual mayor, executed an order on liquor ban, and they violated it. Then that's for Article 2. Then Article 3 is another very important article in the revised penal code. It defines important terms in criminal law. It defines felony, it defines dolo, it defines culpa. So, according to that article, felony is an act or omission punishable by the law. So, felony can be committed through dolo or culpa. Dolo means deceit, culpa means fault. What is the difference between the two? Okay, the same article actually differentiates dulo from culpa. So when you say dulo, the act is committed with deliberate intent. Okay, there is an intent. But when for culpa or fault, the act is the wrongful act done is because of negligence, imprudence, lack of skill, and lack of foresight. So actually, almost all the crimes punished under the revised penal code are committed through dulo or fault or with deliberate intent. Okay, I guess there is one one crime committed by culpa, and that is reckless imprudence. Okay, so in connection with this, okay, if you notice, the definition of dulo is that the act is done with deliberate intent. So what is intent? Okay, intent is use of particular means to bring about a desired result. So for example, okay, um, your desired result is to eliminate the existence of somebody. So you will use a particular means, and that means is killing that somebody. So crime, again, it could be homicide, it could be murder, it could be parricide. Okay, and then what is the overt act? Okay, what are the elements that you have to prove? There must be intent to kill. So this intent actually is a very delicate topic in criminal law. Okay? Because there are two types of intent. Intent could be general intent or specific intent. General intent is actually presumed. Okay? It is presumed. Then specific intent must be proven, just like in the elements of the case. So how to relate this again to current events? So there are actually people posting there are nowadays since we have nothing to do in our home, sometimes we post on Facebook, to the point that sometimes we are not careful of the things we post on Facebook. So there is this particular event, news again, about a teacher who posted on Twitter, offering somebody to reward with 10 million pesos if he can kill the president. So actually that is a crime. That is a crime punishable under Article 142 of the revised penal code. So that could be okay. There is no crime which is charged yet, but a possible crime that could be charged is actually inciting to sedition. Okay, that is punishable under the revised penal code. So that is punishable under the revised penal code. So being punishable in the revised penal code, so intent as a general intent is presumed. So it is now the burden of that accused, okay, to prove that he has no intention to incite sedition or to harm the president. Because again, I mentioned earlier that the crimes in the revised penal code are crimes which are malaise. So I know it is getting complicated. So for next discussion, I will discuss more other principles so that you will be enlightened. So pardon for the quality of this video, and also for equality. Actually, this is my first time to go online, and it is actually different from face-to-face discussion. So thank you so much for bearing with me. So next time, given the chance to give a lecture again, there might be more and more improvement. So what's important here is I'm really passionate to share my knowledge on criminal law to everyone, to all of you. Thank you.